Right, so Keir Starmer has got his motion to block Jeremy Corbyn from standing as the parliamentary candidate for North Islington through. No surprises, really, when many on the NEC who voted for this are as factional as he is. All done on the basis of electability, though, you understand, that Corbyn himself was unelectable. Therefore, he, one man, a vegetable-bothering jam maker at that, threatened the Labour Party's entire election chances come the next general election. It makes him sound like some kind of electoral vegetarian Darth Vader, doesn't it? But it's also entirely patently untrue. And if it was true, there are others still in the Labour Party who perhaps ought not to be either. The motion itself refers to Labour under Corbyn in 2019, delivering the lowest number of Labour MPs to Parliament since 1935. Wording is always very deliberate, very careful in motions because they're legally actionable. But how many times have we heard this 1935 date being referred to as the worst result for Labour since 1935 instead? Because that's very different, isn't it? That's more open to interpretation. You see, when people go out to vote, when parties campaign to win as many votes off of us as they can, those votes don't automatically transfer into seats. Instead, under our stupid system, they have to hope the votes are in the right places in order to win seats. This is why it's a constant stitch-up between two parties. It is true that in 2019, the votes won by Labour under Corbyn translated into the fewest seats since 1935. But that's the system. Corbyn won 32.1% of the national vote, taken as a whole. That didn't translate into 32.1% of the seats in Parliament, that is the problem. If you take the national vote figure, though, 32.1% of the vote was the lowest vote share for Labour since, 2015. Ed Miliband got less of the vote share than Corbyn did in 2019, with 30.4% of the vote. That those votes were cast in places that delivered Labour 30 more seats than Corbyn got in 2019, though, just further exposes the farce of how votes become seats. Miliband actually lost Scotland to the SNP during that election. It's when the SNP landslide took place, and that happened because Miliband stood on a platform alongside the Tories and the Lib Dems and opposed Scottish independence. All three on the same page, all three leaders on the same stage stood there and basically looked all the same to the people of Scotland. So they walked away from them all and voted for somebody else. You might recall that chap John McTernan, who was interviewed a while back, saying Keir Starmer had made Labour a safe place for Thatcherites to return to. He was one of Scottish Labour's strategists back then. Look the guy up, because if you want a litany of losing, he's made a career out of it. But even though Miliband got 30 more seats in 2015 than Corbyn did in 2019, he still lost 26 seats from the previous election, fought by Gordon Brown. Now, Brown made the fatal mistake of not standing for election himself when he first took over from Tony Blair and got punished for it at the polls in 2010, which gave us the coalition government. But even though he held 26 seats that Miliband later lost, his vote share was still less than Miliband's, just as Miliband's was less than Corbyn's in 2019. Brown won just 29% of the vote, the lowest vote share for Labour since 1983, when Michael Foot suffered from a split in the party. Even the Welsh windbag Neil Kinnock outperformed Gordon Brown in terms of vote share, but despite him only winning 20 more seats in 1987 than Michael Foot did in 1983, he was allowed to stay, go and lose another election after in 1992. Factionalism plays its part in Labour and has done for decades. The right want to be in charge over the left. The broad church only ever functions when the right are in charge, and the left allow it because they'll tear things down and let the Tories win power rather than see their own left flank ever succeed. We saw it in 1983 with Michael Foot, the Gang of Four. The same stunt was tried under Corbyn to far less success by the Funny Tinge group, the Change UK lot, several of whom have now been readmitted to the Labour Party under Starmer, even though some of them literally stood for other parties at the last general election. At least Jeremy Corbyn showed loyalty, eh? Corbyn in the 2017 general election, that the Labour right prefer to forget, won 30 seats for Labour. The first time Labour had actually won any seats since the Blair landslide of 1997. Blair won 418 seats back then, massive total. But by the time he fought his last election in 2005, he'd lost 63 of them. Corbyn gained 30 seats in 2017, then lost 60 in 2019. Net loss of 30 for him. So does that make Blair twice as unelectable as Corbyn then? You also have to remember, as I said, the factional underhandedness, though. Corbyn won 30 seats despite Labour HQ misappropriating funds and wasting it on shoring up right-wing MPs instead of using it to campaign to win new seats. 2017 could have been so different without the sabotage going on behind the scenes by the Labour right. 2019 became all about Brexit, and the Starmer himself having positioned Labour as Remain instead of remaining above picking a side and letting the Tories implode over the issue as Corbyn had intended. The damage got done. Corbyn's failure was he was too nice. If this motion needs to have taught him anything now, if all these months of being unfairly excluded from the Parliamentary Labour Party taught him anything, it's that he can't be Mr. Nice Guy if he's going to continue to fight and represent the interests of the people of North Islington as he has done for the last 40 years. Starmer has decreed Corbyn to be unelectable, a man who has defended his own seat and increased his own majority repeatedly, 10 times over. Corbyn lost a net 30 seats. That's Labour's basis for exclusion according to this motion. Why should he be the only one, though, based on what else I've covered here today? Ed Miliband lost 26 seats and Scotland and got lower vote share than Corbyn did in 2019. Gordon Brown lost 97 seats and saw Labour dumped out of power, as well as getting less vote share than Miliband even did. Tony Blair lost a net 63 seats from an albeit high starting point, I accept. But surely that proves how unappetizing continuity Tory is for the public. And see, we've seen this con that Starmer is playing before. If you want one final point, though, about how crazy vote share compared to seat share ends up being, then take a look at the 1951 snap election, which saw Clement Attlee lose to Winston Churchill. Attlee lost despite taking the highest vote share for Labour ever, 48.8%, winning more of the vote share than the Tories did. Yet the Tories still won more seats and were returned to power. Vote share in the UK does not translate directly into seats. So if you're going to convince people to vote for you, but the actual seats won becomes your gauge for success, and you're not actually being very honest about your achievements. We have an unfit for purpose electoral system. Starmer and co have simply used that for their own dishonest ends here. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below. And I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.